Chosen one, begin where presence really begins. Inside the breath, you offer the room. Before a word is spoken, your chest is already telling a quiet story about whether others will have to brace or if they can finally rest. Inhale until your shoulders remember they are a roof before they are a signal. Exhale until your motives become visible to you and you do not flinch from them. The thrill they feel in your company is not sorcery. It is the nervous system recognizing an atmosphere it doesn't have to survive. Joy rises when vigilance can sit down. You prepare that kind of joy, not by turning up volume, but by turning up stewardship, ordering your inner weather so that anyone who steps into it stops scanning for storms. Walk into the moment as if you are carrying a lantern that belongs to everyone. Your sexual energy, disciplined rather than displayed, becomes that lantern. It doesn't interrogate, it illumines. Light like this shows faces without taking them. It finds edges so feet do not stumble. It lets laughter choose its own radius. The feminine is thrilled, not because you dazzle, but because you dignify. Dignity is rare enough to feel like a first sight every time it returns. Practice this before you ever arrive. Set your pace beneath your impatience, set your attention beyond your appetite, and let your body learn the posture that says, I am here to be a place, not a performance. Your arrival begins hours earlier in the small devotions no one sees. When you choose rest over another round of noise, you are tuning your field. When you keep a promise that would have been easy to soften, you are teaching your power its job description. When you aim your appetite toward generosity, you are writing a law inside yourself that desire must serve what is worthy. These unphotographed choices season your heat until it stops trying to be a spectacle and learns to be a hearth. Hearths gather. They don't demand. Hearths invite people to bring their unhurried selves. This is why every entrance feels like light through a window that someone cleaned while the house slept. Let your eyes be faithful witnesses rather than clever collectors. A witnessing gaze returns ownership. A collecting gaze creates invoices. When you look, do it as one who blesses the existence of another person without reaching to annex it. The thrill that rises in that exchange is relief wearing joy. I am seen and still free. You can rehearse this in solitude by noticing without naming, admiring without acquiring, and letting the beautiful remain sovereign in your line of sight. Then, in public, your gaze will carry the purity you practiced in private. It will feel like early morning after long weather. Carry silence as a craft, not a strategy. Silence that serves listening is generous. Silence that sells mystique is expensive. The room can tell the difference. Hold a beat long enough for meaning to arrive at its true size. Let your first words emerge from that settled place, and let them be simple. Simplicity is not a lack of power. It is power that has learned to trust accuracy. Every time you speak from that ground, you lower the cost of being near you. Lower costs produce surplus, and surplus is what joy spends when it claps without a reason it can cite. Keep your entrances humane. Do not take the room hostage with urgency you could have resolved alone. Do not audition your pain. Do not audition your brilliance. Enter as though the threshold itself deserved reverence. Touch the moment lightly first, as a craftsman touches wood to find the grain. Then lay your weight where the grain can bear it, on kindness, on clarity, on pace that protects comprehension. The feminine keeps being thrilled because your pattern teaches her body that no contortion is required to enjoy you. Contortion is the tax of counterfeit intimacy. You refuse to levy it. There is a quiet choreography to arrival that the chosen ones keep practicing. They check the hinges, timing, tone, touch, before they open doors. They return the furniture of attention to rightful places so that shy courage can sit near the fire and loud confidence can learn indoor voice. They make space for reality to enter the conversation without being humiliated. They announce by posture and breath that no one will be made to pay with pieces of themselves. When this choreography is kept, thrill becomes a clean word again. Excitement without debt, brightness without aftermath, eagerness that does not outrun wisdom. This is the gift your presence brings when it has been prepared with reverence rather than decorated for display. Let purpose be the first thing your presence answers to. If appetite is driving, arrival feels like sales. If purpose is steering, arrival feels like guidance. Guidance is thrilling in a way spectacle can never be, because it sounds like a future that won't require amnesia. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to multiply what is good. Arrive like a steward with keys, not a guest with demands. Keys open quiet doors. Safety, breath, laughter that doesn't need knives, truth that doesn't need theater. And the room will meet you with the same gladness it reserves for clean light and fresh water. Chosen one, your presence is a frequency long before it is a face. The thrill that greets you is resonance. Two instruments finding the same pitch and discovering that the sound is bigger than either one could make alone. Tune yourself before you step into any space. Tune thought to integrity, posture to ease, tone to kindness, and let your sexual energy hum at the note of reverence. Reverence is the safeguard of heat. It keeps the room from feeling burned while still feeling warm. Hold that note quietly and watch how anxious hearts begin to tune themselves to peace without being told to calm down. Frequency is coherence made audible. You cultivate coherence when your yes means the same thing on an ordinary Tuesday as it does in a golden hour. When your humor refuses to rent dignity to afford a laugh. When your boundaries arrive already warmed by care. These small consistencies collect into a tone the body trusts. The feminine is thrilled each time, not because you become louder or newer, but because your signal returns without static. In a culture accustomed to interference, clarity feels like celebration. Think of your field as a room with good acoustics. In such a room, whispers carry and shouting is unnecessary. You create this by aligning your intentions with your impact. If you want others to feel free, refuse to make your attention a searchlight. If you want others to feel seen, refuse to audit their story for leverage. If you want others to feel wanted, let desire show up as hospitality rather than hunger. Hospitality rearranges the furniture so the music of a moment can be heard without distortion. People standing there cannot help but smile, and that smile reflects onto you as the glow everyone keeps trying to explain. There is a mathematics to frequency that does not need mysticism to defend it. Pace multiplied by accuracy equals trust. Trust multiplied by warmth equals ease. Ease multiplied by purpose equals joy. You modulate each factor with simple practices. Pace is guarded by sleep and endings that land clean. Accuracy is guarded by words that build more than they brand. Warmth is guarded by daily refusals to take without giving. Purpose is guarded by reporting your power to something taller than appetite. Do this math consistently and you emit a steady note. The heart remembers before the mind finds language. Your frequency is felt most in thresholds. Entering, you resist the spike that wants to prove. Standing, you resist the dip that wants to disappear. Departing, you resist the drag that wants to linger past meaning. The smoothness of those transitions is music. It says, without syllables, that nearness will not be weaponized and distance will not be used as a leash. The body hears that and answers with a thrill that includes relief. Relief is the bass note under every sustainable joy. Let curiosity be the harmony to your fundamental tone. Curiosity without reverence becomes consumption. Curiosity with reverence becomes blessing. Ask questions that make more of the person you're with instead of extracting more for yourself. Listen as though ideas were seedlings and your attention were sun. When you do, people grow in real time. Growth is thrilling to witness and more thrilling to experience. And both flavors of thrill become associated with your presence. You are not the headline. You are the habitat. Habitats are remembered with gratitude long after the performance ends. Guard your mystery so it feeds rather than frustrates. Withhold only what must ripen to be sweet or remain whole to stay holy. Share what adds coherence, not drama. A frequency can be rich without being loud. It can be layered without being confusing. Think jazz more than noise, space between notes, themes that return, surprises that serve the song. You will notice heads tilt and shoulders lower as the room realizes it is listening to something it can trust. Trust turns even plain light into a flattering mirror. Speak in timbres that carry across distance without tearing. If you bless, let the blessing be specific enough to be believed. If you correct, do it at an altitude where dignity can breathe. If you invite, leave room for refusal without penalty. These tones create a soundscape. They travel ahead of you and remain after you go. The next time you appear, The memory of that sound meets the present of your face, and the combination produces the sense of fresh arrival, even if you were there yesterday. Finally, let the chorus of your life be larger than you. The chosen ones are not recognized by volume but by vow. Your vow is simple: to be a place before you are a plan, a frequency before you are a feature, a climate before you are a claim. When you keep that vow, thrilled hearts will keep answering your presence with the joy that renews itself. Not because you have learned a trick, but because you have learned to stay in tune with what is true. Heat, married to honor; desire, apprenticed to wisdom; charisma, reporting to service. Stay tuned, chosen one, and every meeting will sound like sunrise. Chosen one, learn the art of keeping your fire without turning the room into a furnace. Thrill is not the child of volume. It is the offspring of warmth and wisdom agreeing on pace. What feminine women feel in your presence is the rare sensation of heat that knows what it's for. Untended, flame seeks to consume. Governed, it seeks to nourish. You do the slow work that no applause will ever catch. You choose woods that burn evenly, habits stacked quietly each morning. You choose stones that hold heat, standards that do not collapse when complimented. You choose a grate that breathes, boundaries that let oxygen in without letting sparks leap where they don't belong. The result is not a fireworks show, but a hearth. And the body, tired of dazzles that end in smoke, keeps returning to the place where bread rises and faces soften. Begin by giving your fire a purpose. Fire that must prove itself becomes spectacle. Fire that serves becomes shelter. Purpose answers the oldest temptation of energy, which is to mistake attention for meaning. Your devotion is not to brightness, but to benevolence. You keep the temperature where conversation can ripen and revelation can arrive without being interrogated. Your authority is the authority of a well-tuned stove, steady enough to simmer, strong enough to sear, gentle enough to warm a hand without blistering it. In such company, thrill is not panic in a fancy suit. It is rest discovering velocity. The feminine reads that velocity the way sailors read wind. They stop rowing against weather and start traveling with it. You practice thermal governance by tuning inputs that seem ordinary. Sleep is not laziness. It is the contract you sign with your own gentleness, so it will be available later. Work is not punishment. It is the discipline that keeps charm unbribable. Movement is not vanity. It is the liturgy that keeps you embodied when abstraction tries to steal you. Prayer is not performance. It is the quiet refueling of motive until it burns clean. When these inputs are kept, your presence stops begging for oxygen and starts giving it. People come away from you with color back in their faces. They do not know that half the miracle happened while you were choosing water over noise and stillness over scrolling. They only know the room got brighter without anyone turning on a switch. Your fire learns the skill of timing. You have felt how impulse wants to sprint ahead and call that sprint passion. But true heat does not shove, it signals. You wait until meaning arrives at a size that can be honored. You resist the counterfeit intimacy of acceleration. You let beginnings be beginnings and refuse to hijack them with endings in costume. That refusal is a kindness the nervous system recognizes in less than a second. Without the drag of defending itself, a soul picks up speed in the direction of its own honesty. The thrill that rises around you is not the adrenaline of being chased. It is the relief of being invited. There is a mathematics to temperature that the spirit understands. Too cool, and courage shivers back into silence. Too hot, and consent evaporates into performance. You hold the middle like a master distiller holds proof. You watch the room and adjust with prayerful increments. You lower when grief needs a coat. You raise when clarity needs a pan to reduce into flavor. The precision is almost invisible, which is exactly why it is powerful. No one feels handled, everyone feels helped. Later they will search for a word to name what happened and settle on handsome or magnetic or some other costume for the truth. Your heat made wisdom easier. You train your appetite until it becomes hospitality. Untrained appetite negotiates with everything it touches. Trained appetite blesses what it touches. You feel the difference in your reach. One grabs to fill a hole, the other opens to make a space. An opening hand is an architectural act. It says, here is room for you to bring more of yourself without paying rent in pieces of yourself. Feminine women, long practiced at reading the cost of a room, choose joy when they discover there is no hidden invoice. Joy, unbilled, is noisy in the best way. It throws open windows in the body, and light lands on your face like gratitude with a halo. You learn to feed your own fire with truths that do not burn out. Compliment is kindling. Conviction is oak. Momentum is kindling. Mission is oak. Mood is kindling. Vow is oak. When the night stretches longer than you planned, you'll be glad for oak. The chosen ones build stacks of it in hidden sheds, unseen obedience, quiet refusals, unglorious service. And that is why their flame does not panic in wind. The room cannot describe this, so it calls you irresistible. What it means is reliable. You become a student of aftermath. After you leave a conversation, you ask whether heat lingered as warmth or as residue. If there is residue, you clean it up. An apology at the right volume, a boundary rehung at the right height, a sentence reset with better words and a slower breath. You do not dramatize repair, you complete it. The house you keep gets stronger and quieter. Quieter houses flatter every face within them. The glow people claim they see on you is often the reflection of a room you refuse to leave messy. In keeping your fire, you learn the discipline of subtraction. Remove the needless spark that steals attention from the meal. Remove the performative sizzle that tricks the senses into thinking a dish is flavored when it is only loud. Remove the pressure that asks moments to carry proof they were not designed to carry. You do not arrive to audition, you arrive to season. Seasoning is what makes the same ingredients taste like a feast. The thrill of your presence returns not because you brought new tricks, but because you brought the same patience. And patience, when married to heat, tastes like celebration. Finally, place your fire under oath to something taller than your appetite. Report it to purpose morning and night. Ask it whether it served or shined, whether it multiplied or consumed, whether it clarified or performed. Fire so questioned becomes faithful. And faithful fire is the quiet technology behind every room that greets you like sunrise. The words may be, "I can't believe how good it feels when you're here," but the body's report is simpler. It is safe to warm up. Chosen one, now let us consecrate the gaze, for eyes are how your energy learns to touch at a distance. The thrill they feel is not your pupils but your posture, not the color of your iris but the ethics of your attention. A gaze can be a net or it can be a window. Nets catch, tally, and claim. Windows reveal, frame, and release. You choose window work. When you look, you do not confiscate. You allow the sacred to be seen without being seized. The message under your seeing is permission. You are free while being beheld. Freedom in the presence of attention is so rare that bodies read it as wonder, even when the moment is plain. Train your eyes in private to bless what they notice. Notice without naming for your own conquest. Admire without annexing for your own biography. Let beauty remain sovereign inside your field. Practice pausing a heartbeat before you label, so labeling becomes offering rather than ownership. The pause is tiny and cosmic at once. It keeps your gaze from becoming a spotlight that interrogates and turns it into daylight that reveals. Daylight does not apologize for seeing, yet it never goes hunting. Under daylight, colors confess themselves without shame. Feminine women feel this confession rising in them and call it thrill, because the alternative has been a life of performance. Your gaze learns to collaborate with your ears. Too many eyes have been taught to replace listening. Yours become listening's ally. You watch for breath, not for leverage. You notice where a word landed heavy, and you lighten the floor with patience. You notice when a joke deflects a bruise, and you offer a softer place for the truth to sit. The body recognizes this coalition of senses and relaxes. Relaxed bodies are generous with their light. They put it on your face without meaning to. Later, someone will swear you looked radiant. Perhaps you did. Perhaps you simply stood near a person whose courage you made easier to carry. There is a geometry to holy looking. You set angles that protect dignity, never looking down as a habit, never looking through as if people were glass, never looking around someone to get to a better scene. You hold a line of sight that says, "I am here with you," rather than at you. With changes everything. With removes theater from intimacy and replaces it with participation. In with, nearness stops being something to survive and becomes something to steward. The excitement that rises in such places is not a spike of adrenaline. It is the first clean cup of water after a stretch of thirst. You remember that attention has a metabolism. Too much too fast and it floods the moment. Too little too thin and it starves it. You feed by portions. A sentence receives a steady plate. A silence receives a bowl meant for slow sips. A boundary receives a fork and knife so it can be handled without tearing. You never force feed. You never ration in punishment. You let appetite for truth be the chef, and you keep the kitchen humane. The body loves humane kitchens. It associates them with childhoods it deserved and often didn't have. The eyes shine, the shoulders drop, the skin glows. Your face inherits the reflection of that repair and is credited with beauty. Teach your eyes to carry endings kindly. When you must look away, you do it as a benediction, not a dismissal. You close the circle with a nod that can be quoted later by memory. We were seen, and it was good. You don't let your gaze linger past meaning. You don't retract it abruptly, as if intimacy were a hot stove. You place it down as a craftsman places a tool, grateful for what it made, careful not to damage the bench. The next time you appear, the body remembers that your looking is safe to meet again. Safe looking renews thrill, because thrill's favorite food is relief. Let humility be the lens that corrects your sight. Pride magnifies your reflection in every scene. Humility magnifies the sacred in every person. When humility is mounted on your eyes, you stop using people to complete your narrative. You start serving the narrative already aflame in them. This service has a look. It is not shy, but it is gentle. It is not dim, but it is kind. It does not posture, it attends. Under attendance, souls become more themselves without being asked to audition. Becoming more oneself feels like miracle. Miracle writes light on every face in the room, and the room assigns the authorship to the one who is most attentive. Refuse the dark art of harvesting secrets for status. A collector's gaze turns confidences into currency. A priestly gaze turns confidences into covenants. You practice priesthood. What is entrusted to you becomes more valuable in your keeping because it is safer in your keeping. Safety has a flavor. It tastes like unsalted bread that somehow satisfies better than sugared spectacle. People do not bloat on it. They do not crash afterward. They simply find themselves nourished. And as nourishment sinks in, delight rises without reason. That rising is the spark they call thrill. You did not ignite it by performance. You protected it by reverence. Your eyes learn to love edges the way a cartographer loves coastlines. You trace where land meets sea without demanding either become the other. You do not flatten complexity into convenience. Instead, you let complexity inspire competence. Competence is quiet and devastatingly attractive. It holds the map steady while the weather tries to lie. It allows a journey to be long without becoming lost. The feminine feels this steadiness and decides her own edges will not be edited to keep your gaze. That decision floods a body with relief. Relief looks like beauty. The mirror blames you. You bless the mirror and keep mapping with care. Remember that seeing is a gift you return to its giver. You do not hoard it. You do not monetize it with gossip. You do not weaponize it with precision detached from mercy. You see, and then you serve. Sometimes service is silence. Sometimes service is intercession. Sometimes service is the softest correction at the altitude where dignity can breathe. Sometimes service is stepping back so another light can occupy the center without competition. All of it writes a reputation in the only ledger that matters. In your wake, people feel more like themselves and less like a resource. The thrill that greets you again and again is the soul saying thank you in its oldest language. And as your gaze becomes a sacrament, you stop needing to be the most interesting thing in the room to be the most trusted. Trusted presence is what keeps delight from curdling into drama. Trusted presence is what frees laughter from knives and turns longing into direction. Trusted presence is what the chosen ones protect as if it were a spring in a dry country. They fence it without fear, they mark it so travelers can find it, they keep it clear of debris, and they drink last. Drink last, chosen one. Your face will tell a better story than any mirror could script. And the thrill that meets you will not be the applause of a crowd, but the gratitude of a garden. Chosen one, cultivate the cloth of your presence as a master weaver tends a loom. Thrill without texture phrase by noon. Thrill with texture holds like a garment that remembers the body it was made to warm. Set the warp with quiet disciplines. Those straight lines stretched between early rising and honest work, between closing doors gently and keeping a simple promise when no one is looking. Then shuttle the weft of your hour through those lines, a kind word placed at the margin, a pause that lets meaning catch up, a look that returns ownership to the one beheld. The fabric that forms around you is not a costume, but a climate. When the feminine steps into that fabric, she does not feel draped for display. She feels clothed in safety. That safety is why joy arrives laughing in her bones before language has a chance to flatter. It is why so thrilled sounds like breathing, not marketing. Let your presence be annealed like glass. Raw heat dazzles, tempered heat endures. When glass leaves the furnace too quickly, it shatters from its own brilliance. When it cools with patience, it learns to hold light without cracking. You have learned to cool your radiance through rest that protects gentleness, through solitude that trims vanity to usable size, through prayer that signs your power in ink that cannot be forged. This slow tempering makes your warmth durable, invisible in its engineering, yet unmistakable in its effect. People handle the hour differently in your hands. Cups do not chip, windows do not rattle, views become clearer. The body translates that engineering into beauty because it has not often held something strong that was also kind. In the orchestra of human moments, accept the pit rather than the spotlight. The conductor is seldom photographed, yet the music follows the baton. Your sexual energy is percussion trained to love the measure, strings trained to sustain tone, winds trained to breathe with the room. You cue humor when tension needs release, not to steal attention. You lift tenderness when courage trembles, not to harvest gratitude. You ask for a rallentando, just enough slowing that comprehension can join the melody. This is not performance, it is stewardship of tempo. The surprise that crosses a face when you enter is the surprise of hearing a favorite theme return at the right speed. Awe is a bodily standing ovation, even when the hands remain still. Become bilingual in beginnings. Some doors open like books, asking to be read. Others open like gardens, asking to be walked. Read the book with quiet, the garden with patience. Your first sentences should be paths, not spotlights. Let them curve toward what matters. Let them be strong enough to carry, light enough to invite. The thrill that rises is proportional to the gentleness of a threshold. Where thresholds are violent, excitement is only adrenaline in disguise. Where thresholds are tended, excitement becomes the preface to peace. Attend to the hydraulics of attention. Water that gathers too fast floods. Water that refuses to gather leaves thirst. You learned the valves. You open them when the story needs rain. You narrow them when the soil cannot drink more meaning. When conversation becomes a field, you irrigate evenly. No droughts that starve shy courage. No torrents that tear up fragile roots. The system hums out of sight, but its fruit is visible in the faces around you. Color returns. Posture softens, eyes reacquire horizon. The feminine is thrilled because thirst is being addressed without being exploited. You are not selling water, you are stewarding a watershed. Practice the ceramics of repair. Clay remembers the hands that touch it, so do moments. If an angle dries wrong, you soften it without scolding. If hairline fractures appear, you mend with gold, naming the crack without making it the headline. The bowl returns to service more beautiful than before. Not because it pretends it was never broken, but because it learned how to hold and be held. Rooms mended this way become heirlooms. People want to bring their ordinary bread to such tables. Their happiness in your presence is not infatuation. It is the relief of finding dishes that won't fail mid-meal. Carry the quiet mathematics of surplus. Scarcity taxes every sentence. Surplus tips every sentence with grace. Surplus is not money, it is margin. The 5 minutes you give a goodbye so gratitude can land. The inch of patience you leave in a disagreement so dignity can breathe. The extra clarity you add to a promise so memory can carry it later without strain. The body detects surplus the way the tongue detects sweetness. It doesn't need an explanation. It trusts the chemistry. Trust, metabolized into mood, paints your face with a light that does not come from angles but from abundance. Let your voice learn the trade of the cobbler. Shoes that pinch make journeys short. Shoes that flop make journeys clumsy. You fit words the way a master fits leather, snug where support is needed, soft where movement is natural. You trim the excess that would blister, you reinforce the heel where load will bear. You polish not to blind, but to protect. People leave the conversation ready to walk farther than they planned. Distance traveled without pain becomes gratitude, and gratitude is always flattering to the one who made it possible. Make the commons your chapel. Thresholds, calendars, sinks, the way a phone is turned face down when a human is turned face up. These are liturgies that either crown or crucify attention. You choose coronation. You lift ordinary things to their rightful dignity until they become sacraments of care. Rooms acquire acoustics in which truth sounds good at a human volume. Faces, relieved of having to shout, become generous with light. Light, relieved of having to beg, becomes generous with you. This exchange is the everyday miracle behind the words, "So thrilled to be in your presence."